Shalom Bracha. Bez Hashem, I hope to continue the shiurim that we started giving the series on the history of Klal Yisrael and Gulas. How available was it to Mekayim mitzvahs she'enam tlim ba'uretz? We know there's a chiluk between mitzvahs of tlim ba'uretz, mitzvahs that you can only do in Eretz Yisrael. And when Yidden went to Gulas, it's poshet that those mitzvahs they were deprived from. But when the Eden went, but what people don't pay attention is all the mitzvahs that the Eden weren't able to be Mekayim in Gulas itself. We do marach about how the Rambam puts down the whole idea of Gulas is a oynish that we shouldn't be able to be Mekayim the mitzvahs, and because the biggest opportunity a person has in this world for Kirvus Hashem, which is the tachlis of the whole world, is to do mitzvahs. As much as opportunity he has mitzvahs, and as much as he does it with mindful about it, with Havas Hashem, Yiras Shamayim, that determines the outcome of his whole tachlis in this world and his whole Olam Haba. The whole point of the Geula is that we should have opportunity to do mitzvahs to get Olam Haba. We were married this in the past. I hope to continue now the shiurim, and specifically in the topic of a very interesting topic about the possibility of Klal Yisrael and Golus to obtain Sefer Torah, to be able to have Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah Pasha that we take it for granted, that we every week we reach from a Sefer Torah. So, it always gets more muhadar, and chumras like avachumras. But what we don't know is that there was many generations in Klal Yisrael and Golus that they didn't have opportunity to have the most important thing, which is the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah is the most important thing that Klal Yisrael has. That's the Eibishter gave it to Matan Torah. That's what makes us a nation. And the pasuk says, "Malku v'sereva goyim in Torah." Klal Yisrael and Golus does not have Torah. Literally means there was no Nevi'im to teach us. There was no. We lost the whole madrigas of Torah in Golus. Mitzvahs brachas starts off with the inyan of Charbon Abayis. We spoke about this in the past. To show you, even Talmud Bavli, we don't have is not the Torah that we should really have. But the most important of everything is the Sefer Torah, the Torah the Eibishter gave us from Matan Torah, and that's the most important object that we can have in this world. And there was quite a while, the Klal Yisrael and Golus, that were not zoiche to be able to have a Sefer Torah. Not only that, they didn't have Kisvei Kodesh, they didn't have Svarim, they didn't have Sidurim, and we take everything for granted. But it's time for us to understand what our grandparents went through, the Mesiras Nefesh they had, and only because of them we stayed a nation, Nemel Hashem v'Terasai, and understand what kind of goals they went through, and understand the chesed that Hashem is bestowing us, understand that Hashem is smiling to us, understand that the opportunity we have to have Sefer Torah is a smile from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and appreciate it, and not just continue ignoring the smile and the care that Hashem is looking from us. He's waiting for us to turn to Him and realize that He's smiling. How a spouse feel when he's looking out for the ahava and chibah from his spouse and just ignoring it. Hashem is smiling to us, and we can't continue ignoring it. How do we know Hashem is smiling to us? Because if we see the Harein Af, the Klal Yisrael endured b'meshach the Galus, then we'll understand how Hashem, when the Eibishter gives us the opportunity to have what we have, what kind of smile that is, what kind of ahava and chibah that shows. So, as Hashem, I would like to focus on this topic now. Might be a few shiurim. In the beginning, I would like to actually understand the gzeira of what over the generations we find that the Sifrei Kodesh and Sifrei Torah were all burnt. What that means to us, understand what we're going to be talking about, the Cumik of the Gzeira of the Harein Af that we endured, and then actually see how we endured. What was the practical consequences? What did our grandparents and our Gedolim have to go through? and then see how far have we become of the tikkun of this gullus, of this gzeira of Tcherenaf. How far are we, and what's the opportunity Hashem is giving us? This whole sugya starts ben Yonah D'Yoma. Today is Tisha B'Tamuz. Tes B'Tamuz is the day that the Morah says, it's a pasuk in Yirmiyah, that the first Beis Hamikdash was Hufkar Ir. We know Shiva also B'Tamuz Hufkar Ir, that they broke into Yerushalayim. That was the second Beis Hamikdash, according to the Bavli, at least. In the first Beis Hamikdash, they broke into Yerushalayim, Tes B'Tamuz, which is today. Another thing happened on Tes B'Tamuz, which was Srifat Talmud. In times of Maram Rottenberg, Rabbeinu Yechiel Paris, they gathered all the Kisvei Yadis. In those days, there was no printing press, and they gathered caravans, 20 caravans, whatever it was, of Kisvei Yadis, and they burnt it. And it was a terrible, terrible gzeira, as we'll see what the consequences happened. But what does this mean to us? What is the Cumik of this gzeira? And this happened also on Tisha B'Tamuz, but actually this week's parsha in Chutz La'aretz is Parshas Chikas. And in Sheboyah Leket, as we'll see, says that was Nixgal Mechfan Shemayim, that the gzeira had to do with Erev Parshas Chikas. Dog gzeira, Zoyschik is a Torah, dog gzeira, Eraisa. So, although it happened at Tisha B'Tamuz, but this is going to be, we're proud of it on the Parshas Chikas, Erev Shabbos. So this Erev Shabbos, according to Shulchan Aruch, Mishabur brings down the Sheboyah Leket, there's a stark in to fast. It was last Shabbos. Interesting enough, for quite a while I wanted to go through this discussion. I just didn't get around to it. And Eibishter was Mamtzi the Yechelis to actually do it now. Bez Hashem, I hope to finish it. I was to give me the opportunity to start it. So let's get into it now. What's the teichen of this discussion? Everyone knows in the Gemara, the Mishnah Tainus, it says Chamishi Dvarim Iru Es Avaseinu B'Shiva Asa B'Tamuz. 5 things that happened to our grandparents on Shiva Asa B'Tamuz. Shiva Asa B'Tamuz is around the corner. 5 things happened. The Chamisha over Tisha B'Av, and 5 things happened on Tisha B'Av. What were the 5 things that happened on Chamisha Asa B'Tamuz? Nishtabra Luchas, the Luchas broke. Moshe Rabbeinu threw down the Luchas and it broke. Ibitul Atamid, they stopped being Makriv Korban Atamid to Beis Hamikdash. V'hufka Ha'ir, and the Yerushalayim, they broke into Yerushalayim. V'sarif Apustamus es HaTorah, and Apustamus burnt the Torah. V'hemet Tzelem B'Heichel, and they put a Tzelem in the Heichel of the Beis Hamikdash. Those are 5 things that happened on Shiva B'Tamuz. 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. It was Nigzer and our grandparents. They shouldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. They're in Midbar. It was on Tisha B'Av. The first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash were Chorev on Tisha B'Av. Betar was captured on Tisha B'Av. Yerushalayim was Nechrash on Tisha B'Av. Those are the 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av. If we think about it, it's a Appel Otzim, because seems as if you think into the teichen of this Mishnah, Beis Hamikdash was Chorev on Tisha B'Av. But when we were misboinen a little bit in the teichen and Yonim, we'll see that Chamisha Shiva Asa B'Tamuz is a lot more chomer than Tisha B'Av. Why? So let's look into it. So this is understood that Nishtabra Luchos the Sreifas HaTorah through Apistamus. This that the Luchos got broken and Apistamus burnt the Torah. This is one thing. Shikchas HaTorah, the burning of the Torah. That's what happened on Chamisha Asa B'Tamuz. that's the Teichen, the Kotche Baruch, the Klal Yisrael and the Rebbeinu Shalom, that source of the Torah and the Luchos, that was destroyed. That connection between Klal Yisrael and the Rebbeinu Shalom was destroyed on Chamishas of Tamas. Kotche Baruch Yisrael Chadu. And that's the idea of the carbon atomid, that the carbon atomid was stopped them. What's the idea of the carbon atomid? The main avodah the Klal Yisrael has is the avodah sakabonis in the Beis Hamikdash, and the avodah from the carbon atomid, which is a daily carbon, that is the main connection through the carbonis which Klal Yisrael have with the Rebbeinu Shalom. That is as if the wife brings food to the husband. That stopped. Moshe says, I don't want to have a connection with you. I don't want to have banana from you. The main avodah of the main avodah in the main topic, the avodah that we have, carbon atomid from all the avodas akabanis, that stopped on Chamisha Asavav. And Yerushalayim was Hofka, which means that the goyim were the Charlotte, their shlita on the main part of Klal Yisrael, the main part of Eretz Yisrael, which is Yerushalayim, which is Kolon there, Malchus Beis David, is Kolon there, the Beis Hamikdash. Goyim got the shlita on that on Shivas Batamas, and the Tel Behechel, which is the biggest shlita of Koiches Atuma on the Koiches Akadusha on Klal Yisrael, the biggest shlita of the Umas Olam on Klal Yisrael. That's what happened on Shivas Batamas. So the connection between the Torah and the Avodah and the shlita on Klal Yisrael through Yerushalayim and the Tel Behechel, that all occurred on Shivas Batamas. That is the biggest tragedy possible. What happened on Tisha B'Av? The Beis Mikdash was charav. You couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael, and the ear was nechrash. You mowed down the ear, the city. These are all gashmistic things. Yes, the Beis Mikdash is very important, but if there's no avodah, if there's a tzelem the heichel, the Beis Mikdash is only a frame. What happened is really the ikar choyme of the carbon really happened in Shivas Batamas. And as the Gemara says, and the Nefesh Chaim Zidua speaks about Barichas, that when Titus came and was machned Beis Mikdash, all he found was a shell. There was nothing in there. Beis Mikdash was already charav. Kimcha Kina Tchachan. The Gemara says that he grounded a whole grounded flour. Means there was nothing there. The Yidden with the Averis were already plaguing in the Beis Hamikdash, and the whole kedusha was given over to the Sita Acha, and the connection between the Klal Yisrael and the Rebbeinu was already done. Shivas Batamas. Tisha B'Av was only the end of it, and the reason why we avail is on Tisha B'Av, not Shivas Batamas, because in the Olam HaGashmi it wasn't. Yeah, maybe they'll continue doing the carbon atomid. Maybe they'll take away the tzelem for the hechel. You never know what the second lichus is going to be, and so on. And we'll write another Sefer Torah, more Mahot Sefer Torah. But when it came to Tisha B'Av, we saw that all this was etched in stone, and there was no way back. That it was taka, the ikar charbon taka happened in Shivas Batamas. And Tisha B'Av is only there for two reasons. First of all, it shows us that everything really occurred on Shivas Batamas, and also for us to connect. We need something gashmius. We can't just say, "Oh, the previous in Yanim was gone on Shivas Batamas, and let's be misabel." We need something with Gushim. So we can connect to that place. We connect to the holiness. So that's why we must abel on Tisha B'Av. But really, Ikar Avelis is on Shivas Batamas. It happened in Shivas Batamas. Now let's go a little bit more toichendik. Shivas Batamas the Shtabra Lichus. What does the Shtabra Lichus mean? Shtabra Lichus means Shikhes HaTorah. Mara says, Chazal say, Mara and Avon, that in Molil and Shtabra Lichus Rishonis, Lanishkech HaTorah Yisrael, we wouldn't have been Shikhes HaTorah, only because Moshe Rabbeinu threw down the Luchus and it broke it. That's why we forget. I need a paper in front of me to remember what I'm saying. Why? Because there was a Shvius HaLuchas. So only because the whole Shiksa Torah came because Shviras Haluchos. And from there, because I'll say to them, we have to learn Tech Tsar, Teuchik, and Tech Tiltel. All the Schwerkeit in obtaining the Torah happened because of Shviras Haluchos. That's the idea of the Shviras Haluchos. Is the Indian for Shviras Haluchos is the Gemara says that that Misas Tzadikim is kosher like Kodesh Baruch Hu, like Shviras Haluchos. What does that mean? That means the Shikha Torah. If someone tzaddik dies, we're missing that void. And that's what happened. When the Luchas Rishonis was broke, that was gone forever. And that's the idea of Shviras Haluchos. Now let's go to the Indian from that Apostomus burnt the Torah. What does it mean? Who is Apostomus and what Torah did he burn? What is going on here? Chazal give us very, very little details, and it's very murky. We don't know exactly what Chazal is talking about. There's some Rishonim that say we're talking about a Melech from Malchi Yavon by Yesheni, but we don't have much more than that. We don't know the exact details, and Chazal don't give us the details. Maybe if you're a historian, you'll be able to research some story that a king burnt a certain cemetery. What cemetery we're talking about? But I think Chazal telling us over here is that there was never such a thing with the Goyim, that even the Goyim would never dare to burn a Sefer Torah. To burn the Rebbeinu Shalom's Torah, that was unacceptable, even by the Goyim. Even before Christianity, before anyone came along. Why? Because it says when the Melkav Torah, all the Olam heard Hashem Lamal Yashav, they all came to Bilam, and everyone knew about Matan Torah. It was Yitu Faket from Matan Torah, it was Sinayard Olam. They knew that we're the chosen nation, and they knew that the Torah is the source of our connection to the Rebbeinu Shalom, and they will never touch the Dvar Hashem. We find in Masechet Megillah how the Umas Ha'olam, the nations of the world, they were terrified of the word of the Navi. Over the Achashverosh and other kings, they made cheshbonis. The king said, the Navi said, this way, and they made all the cheshbonis, everything based on the words of the Navi. They all believed in the Navi. Hashem sent Yoinah to the Goyim. They all believe in Dvar Hashem. There was never such a concept that a Goy would burn a Sefer Torah. That was unheard of. In the first Beis Mikdash it says in Eicha that no one ever believed that the Goy would come and be machar the Beis Mikdash. Everyone knew that Klal Yisrael was the chosen nation of the world, and no one ever dared actually to come to even be machar of the Beis Hamikdash. That was unheard of. They never believed that someone would actually accomplish his goal to do that, even if he would try. And the same thing with the Torah. No one ever dared to touch the Torah. They knew that touching the Torah, touching the Eivish's eye. But what happened? Came Malchus Yavan. It's not negaya who it was and which Sefer Torah it was. The actual possibility that a Torah was burned, that was a chiddush, and that chiddush was a new period in the world, new period of Klal Yisrael. It's a charbon itself, just like there was a charbon of Shviras Haluchos, so too there was a charbon that they burnt the Sefer Torah. That put in this world, the Olam HaKashmi, a capability of the Goyim being shaylat on the connection of Klal Yisrael and the Rebbeinu Shalom. In the times of the Yevonim, came down a chashecha in the world. That's when all the sreikas of the Gemara started. That's when there was the Shikha Torah in this world started. That came along with Apostomus. Was Sharif the Torah? Same thing. The Yevonim when we're talking the Torah to Yevonis, where the world became choshech. That's what was the period when the Torah started going into Galus. In the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, times of the Yevonim, that's when the second Beis Hamikdash, Klal Yisrael didn't return to the first Beis Hamikdash, and that's when the Yevonim got was shaylat on Klal Yisrael, and they and they were able to be served to the Torah. That was a new charb which came down to the world. During the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash was still around, but that was the matzav. That was the matzav of the Yevonim, and that's what this is telling us, that this is a new charbon that came out into the world, and that was a continuation of the charbon of Shviras Haluchos. Near 1215, as we said, there was a Srivisat Talmud, Ebichil Paris, had a debate with a Yid that went off the derech, and he was forced to debate him about the Torah. Even though he won, the king, the Galachim, would go say you have to take all the caravans of the Torah, of the Gemara, of everything, and just burn them all. And over then was the Meram Rottenberg was then over there, and he saw it, and he made a famous kina on this story. Erev Shabbos Chikas, Tes Tammuz, they went and they burned like 20 caravans of Kisviyadis, of Talmud and Sifrei Kodesh. And this was the first time ever such a thing happened. So Meram Rottenberg wrote a kina on this on this story, and it's Yidua, the Sha'al Srifa, that's the kina he wrote about it. And the Tanya is in the Magavram brings down from Sefer Tanya. That's why we know Misana, because they burned 20 caravans of Sfarim in Sarfas in Spain. Yeah. So how does the kina go from Rami Rottenberg? It says like this: Chodesh Shlishi v'Hakesher Harvi. Sorry. In the third month of Nisan Ir Tishrei, no, Nisan Ir Sivan Thomas, Nisan Ir Sivan Thomas. So the third month until Sivan, Kalso still had the Gedula of Kalso still in the Madrega during the first Beis Hamikdash, but still in the beginning of the fourth month, the Hakesher Revi, the beginning of the fourth month, beginning of Tammuz, Kalso still had their beauty. But then came Shiva Asa B'Tammuz, and Lahashris Chamdascha Chol Yofi Kilascha. The Eibush was mashchis all the beauty of Klal Yisrael on Shiva Asa B'Tammuz. What did he do? He destroyed the lichas, and he burnt the Torah. God al aluchos, va'isham be'avalta liser ve'ishtas, and then he burnt the Torah also. So, the beginning of this kina about the burning of the Svarim, the Mamre Rottenberg speaks about how this month was also the Shviras Halichos and the burning of the Torah from Apostomus. What he means to say is that this was the shirish of what was going on in his generation. As he goes on, Atambul Nashi, I wonder for my soul, how can I enjoy food, eating? After I saw that after I saw they gathered into the main square of the city, Svarim kinedachas v'sorfi shlal elyon, and they burned shlal elyon, the Torah and all the Svarim. So what's he saying over here? He's saying that they burnt the Sefer Torah just like they did, like the Yidden did to Ir Dachas, the city which was Meses Mediach and Avodah Zarah, and the whole city we did Avodah Zarah. You take all the Nechasim and you bring it into the main part of the city, and you burn it all. So you have to burn that. Yeah, you have to burn it all. So just over here, same thing over here. They burnt the Torah and everything else, and all the Sefer Kodesh in the middle of the center of the town, center of the city. So we see over here two things. Number one, that the Srifa from Kisvi Yodas, this was the first time that happened, is an extension from the Shviras Halichos, an extension from the Torah which Apostomus burnt. And that's the reason why this happened in Tammuz also, Tespet Tammuz, because this was an extension of burning the Sefer Torah. That's number one what we see. Number two is we see the Maram Rotmik is medamet is to shripet in adachas. What's the dimion to shripet in adachas? There's two times that the kedusha is shown and totally on the tumah. Where do we find that? We find that by the para aduma. Para aduma represents tumas mace. It's the biggest tumah possible. Tumas mace. What do? You go and you burn it. What does that mean? That the kedusha is shown on the tumah. That's how you get rid of the tumah. You burn it. The next place we find the shlit on the tumah is by avodah zarah, by ira adachas. You take the biggest tumah of ira adachas, you didn't do averis. So one is mitzad the gashmius, mitzad tumas meis, and one is mitzad the averis, biggest tumah possible. Avodah zarah done through a whole city. Whole city was over the avodah zarah, and that's the biggest avera and the biggest oifen to do the avera, which is through a group. Which is that's considered that's you can't do anything worse. To do the biggest affair with a group is the worst of the worst. What they do? How do you shut it on that affair? You go and you burn it. What happened over here is that they took over here was just the opposite. The goyim, the koich hatuma, took the biggest kedusha that we have, Sipri Kodesh, and took it in the center of the city, and they burnt it. What does that mean? That's the opposite of Ina Adachas. The Koich HaTumah was shoilet on the Koich HaTor. The biggest Tumah was shoilet on the biggest Kedusha. That itself is the same Chorban as the Chorban of Shus Alichas, the Chorban of Pistim Sarf as Atayra. That the Kedusha being in Ganzen, being Nishla Tachas, the Tumah. And we see Mr. brings down. The Mechaber says that they were masakin to Tachnunim and to the base Vehei, Monday and Thursdays, special Tachnunim on the Chorban, and on Surface HaTorah, State Mr. brings that from Magavrov and Arizal, that we have to cry, and Arizal speaks about it by Chatim Chatzos, is mashma. That's one of the main things. That part of the Avelos of the Chorban is the idea of crying over that the Torah was nimser to the Musaylam. So the Mechaber v'yesh mishaomer shegazru hashiyim esam b'chol sheni v'chamishi. They were goyim. You should be fast every Monday and Thursday. A Chorban Abayis v'al Torah shenisirfa. And the Chorban Abayis, the Torah was burnt. Al Chil Hashem. And Chil Hashem v'la'asad lo b'yihapchim Hashem l'sasan l'simcha. So this was there was a gzeira to fast every Monday and Thursdays. Avuk shu now in the Madrega. You can't do it. But every Monday and Thursday to be misabel on the Chorban B'Simigdash and misabel on the Shrifas HaTorah. Why is that so critical to be misabel on the Shrifas HaTorah? No, it's a terrible thing, but every Monday and Thursday, we don't even know the story of Shrifas HaTorah. And this is what it is. That's what it brings down from the Rizal. This is the idea. This is the idea what was going on. Transpired in this day of Srepes HaTorah from the times of Ram Rottenberg, and this is what he was crying on, that it's Srepes Ina Hadachas. This is the biggest shlita of the goyim on the Eden. The Torah is K'churuch Yisrael Chadu, as thou prize to be able to go and on Simchas Torah, take a Torah and dance with the Rebbeinu Shalom. That is the idea what we're speaking about. So when we look into the generations that they didn't have the Torah, and it started because of Gzeir, as we'll see, because of Gzeiros that they burnt the Torah. There were generations, hundreds of years, that the Klal didn't have a kosher Sefer Torah. There was a generation that most of the Klal read from a Chumash because there wasn't kosher Sefer Torah. Understanding that is understanding the Tukif of Golos, on the Tukif Harichok, in Mois Ma'astanu, Kutzafta Lina Ad Moed. This is part of the Chorban, part of the Yisoidus of the Chorban that we're supposed to be misabel on and think about. So it's very important to understand the history of what we went through, to actually understand where we were and where we are now. As Hashem, hope to get next year to go into more detail of what happened over here.